Hello and welcome to the Get French Football News Preview Show. Today, March 2nd, 2017. I'm Eric Devin, and joining me this week are Nathan Stables and Adam White. Late drama at the Velodrome and a muddy pitch in Niort. We're here to recap the Coupe de France and look forward to match day 28 in Ligue 1. Tuesday saw Angers given all they could handle by CA Bastia, but eventually prevail 1-0. Well, Bordeaux came from behind to defeat Lorient 2-1. Fréjus Saint-Raphael recorded the surprise result of the day with a 2-0 victory over Auxerre. Well, on Wednesday, Guingamp beat Quevilly 2-1. PSG dispatched a feisty Niort 2-0, and Avranches put out Strasbourg on penalty, seeing the national side into the quarterfinals. The best was saved for last, though, as Marseille 3 times came back from a goal down, only to lose in extra time to Monaco 4-3. Lille handed Bergerac a dramatic late defeat through Eder in extra time to win 2-1. And they're off for the quarterfinals to be held April 4th or 5th. Sees Angers hosting Bordeaux, Avranches receiving PSG, Guingamp traveling to the south coast to face Fréjus, and Lille hosting Monaco. There was also one match in Ligue 1, a rescheduled encounter between Bastia and not surprisingly, the host went down to 10 men, but then came back to go up 2-0 before Nantes hit a last-minute equalizer through Diego Carlos to draw 2-2. How are you gents doing this week?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah, good, thanks, Eric.
All right. Adam, let's start with Bordeaux's win over Lorient. I've not been hesitant myself to slag off Jeremy Menez in the past, but on this occasion, he really played a splendid match. His movement really dovetailed well with that of Laborde and Unas. And do you think that his being benched has been a turning point for the veteran, giving him a new perspective? Is he cognizant of the talent of his younger teammates, or is this simply a one-off?
I'd like to think it's not a one-off, but I'm sort of leaning towards the fact that he's still got a lot to prove, given his form for the previous half, 7-8 months now of the season. He really has been very sort of not just bad, but ineffective. He's really failed to influence games on a regular basis, and often goes missing. And his control's been off, and he's just made poor decisions, and he's been poor. But he really did play arguably his best game since they won at Lyon 3-1 earlier in the season, which was September, October, and whether the bench, this period on the bench, he's sort of been in and out of the side, and he really started 4 of the last 9 or 10 games in January and February.
I'm not sure if it's that, but yeah.
Yeah, he even had that suspension, didn't he, as well? This is after he came back from suspension, he had 3 games out, and then was injured for a game as well. So he's obviously had a lot of time out, and I think it's almost like he's had a bit of a wake-up call, because the way that Kamano's been playing he was brilliant against Guingamp, fantastic goal, unbelievably good in that game. Malcolm's really come to the fore and has really kicked on this season, and Unas is still a very, very talented player, although he hasn't been quite as good as he was last year, discipline issues. So he knows that he's not guaranteed a place in the side, and perhaps isn't even first choice anymore. So if he really wants to be playing football, he's still 29, he's not 30 just yet, so he's got a fair amount of his career ahead of him. And if he wants to avoid his career petering out and perhaps not being a success at Bordeaux, he's got a relatively long contract, so he's going to be there for a little while, so he's seen as a marquee signing. But if he's not playing well, then he's not going to be in the side, and perhaps he's going to have limited options should he move on in the summer if he really doesn't, it really doesn't coalesce for the rest of the year. So for him, he really has to kind of buck his ideas up a little bit, because he's been poor. So I think perhaps that appear on the bench has sort of helped him realise that this is a very talented team, and that if he wants to be in the side, he's going to have to be playing well. He's not going to walk in just because he's Jeremy Menez. So I think for now we can say it might be a bit of a one-off given his previous form, but I'd love to see him playing well, because at his best he's a very good player. So let's see how it goes before we get too excited. But he was good against Lorient.
All right. Speaking about another match that took place in the Coupe de France, Nathan, Alphonse Areola looked very shaky in PSG's match against Niort, with poor handling on several occasions. The conditions were extremely poor, but given the youngster's earlier form this season, the mistakes he's made, what does this say about his future? I mean, Salvatore Sirigu is on loan, but he's still on PSG's books, and he's definitely been a capable deputy and even a starting keeper in the past. But Areola's 24 now. He's had 3 full seasons on loan. He did well at Villarreal last season. But have we seen enough of this player to have a permanent judgment on him? I mean, is he starting to run out of chances, is the question here?
It's starting to look like that it's heading that way, doesn't it? I mean, you mentioned it was a poor pitch at Niort. That's maybe selling it a little bit short. I don't know if people have seen the gif of Lucas's shot that's heading in that gets stopped in the mud. Just shows you how bad that pitch was. It was awful. But yeah, Areola made a couple of mistakes, a couple of mistakes all season. I mean, he almost gifted Lille that draw a couple of weeks ago. where his pass from out the back really was way too short and allowed Lille to grab a goal in a game where they simply were defending behind the ball for the entirety of it and almost gifted them a point. And to look shaky again against a team like Niort with the form that Trapp's shown in recent weeks, especially in the Champions League as well, and being confident in those games and showing what we've probably seen in Germany, at least those that watched him while he was still at Eintracht Frankfurt. But that's really the worry for him now. You mentioned he's 24. He's been on loan a couple of times at Bastia and Villarreal, and he impressed in those moments, but he just seems to fade in concentration at moments. He does silly little things. He doesn't seem confident in himself. I don't know whether it's being at a bigger team where you have less work, and as a goalkeeper, you need better concentration skills to make sure you're sharp for 90 minutes when you might only have to make one or two actual moments of making a difference in a game. Whether he's got that mentality, I think, is the thing that's in question now. And that's why he's starting to run out of chances. And especially with Trapp doing better. Yeah, you mentioned Salvatore Sirigu, but I think he's a starting goalkeeper somewhere, surely. And if you're PSG, do you really want to lose Alphonse Areola and get another keeper in? Maybe if you can recruit enough money back from selling him, because I think there is still a worth to him. I still think he's a decent keeper, but again, it was a similar situation we had to Trapp last season where we thought maybe they needed a better keeper, someone like Areola, ironically, to really man the sticks and probably force him out the team, and he did briefly. So whether he still has that moment of redemption in him, I'd probably give him another season yet, because especially with the goalkeepers that are around, you can get a lot of longevity out of a goalkeeper, and he could still come good, I think. But he is starting to run out of these chances, and if he keeps making mistakes heading into next season, they've got a decision to make on him.
All right, Adam, moving on to you now. Speaking about Ligue 1, Bastia took a big step in some direction, not necessarily forward, towards a creditable performance, at least, yesterday with 10 men, even after Alexander had been sent off earlier on. And what looked different for the Corsicans yesterday? And do you think, following up from that new man, Ray Almeida, who has replaced Francois Cicciolini on Monday, can turn things around?
First of all, yes. I think the new manager who's coming in has definitely added a degree of perhaps focus to the team. It felt like yesterday that they were very much focused on their tasks. They were very much much more organized. The players that this season have perhaps let their enthusiasm and their what is often a very sort of competitive team is kind of boiled over a little bit too much on too many occasions. And I don't know that Ciccolini had all that much control over the side too much. I felt like they sort of got a bit ragged in certain cases, especially with Karazak, who's been sent off 4 times already this season, had 5 suspensions, and has been sent off 10 times in 121 Ligue 1 games. Is kind of sort of embodies the team a little bit. And we've seen that with perhaps the club as a whole has been a little bit a bit out of control this year. They've the fans have got in trouble more than one occasion with Lucas earlier in the season, and obviously with Balotelli. It's sort of been a bit of a tumultuous year, and their home form has suffered as a result, which normally is good enough to keep them in the league on its own. So I feel like yesterday, it was 2 days ago now. Oh, no, last night. Sorry. That they really felt like they were much more together as a group, and they had them sort of focused and well drilled, and they were sort of fighting for each other a little bit more rather than sort of fighting outwardly. So I was quite impressed with that hold he had over the side. Even when they went down to 10 men, they showed that character. Perhaps in previous games, you thought when Duku got sent off 10 minutes in, you're sort of thinking, oh, here we go, Bastia being a little bit over the top in terms of their aggression once more. But they really held it together, and what has been a very good non-side on Conceição, they played fantastically well, and worked well as a team, pushed at the right times in that second half, and when they needed to, and they got those 2 goals, and perhaps were justified in getting those 2 goals, perhaps a little bit on the counter, but they worked hard towards them as a group, which hasn't been the case this season. They've been a bit erratic, so that was really nice to see. And I have never been a huge fan of Ciccolini anyway, beyond that sort of perceived, at least on my part, that unable to control the side when they're out on the pitch. But I don't know that he really got the best out of their best players. I know Alan Saint-Maxime has been great this season, but I expected more from Crivelli and players like that, and I don't know that they've really been they've really been cajoled into those performances that you expect from them, especially at home, which hasn't been utilised. So I think that although it's one performance and it's still very early and it's very congested at the bottom of the table, 2 or 3 wins could push them up. There's still a little bit of way to to go to see that they're going to be better than 3 or 4 of those sides at the bottom. But it's a really, really good start. And even though they didn't win the game, they'll be extremely happy with that draw, even though they did concede, to those 2 late goals. They're very unfortunate. But against 11-man without the end stand, with the very famously vociferous support there, I feel like it's a bit of a win for them as a club overall. And I think they'll be really, really, the future's a little brighter than it was, but with Ciclini in charge, because it at least from yesterday's performance, obviously it's very early days, it felt like they were together again as a group and they were pulling in one direction, which hasn't necessarily been the case this season so far. So hopefully, because I like them as a club, I think they're something different to Ligue, and being from Corsica, they've got that island mentality. They're slightly unusual in terms of a team. So it'd be good to keep that variety in Ligue, and so perhaps the future's a bit brighter for them going forward with it so congested at the bottom.
Yeah, I think that Almeida certainly inspired confidence. I've just seen a tweet pop up here on my feed from Gal Danic. She said, "How can we not take 3 points Saturday with this mindset, motivation, and especially this atmosphere? Forza Bastia." So certainly I think Danic is embodying a very combative and fighting team spirit there that we certainly, the team had been lacking, at least in the way that helps them on the pitch rather than hinders them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Danic was quality yesterday. He had a great game. He really did have a good game.
Yeah, I unfortunately did not see the match because I was watching the Coupe de France stuff, but it was good to see Bastia get a point at least, and not in good form.
I just want to quickly mention from what I saw of the game, I thought GQ's challenge was abysmal.
Yeah, it really was.
Absolutely awful challenge. And I think Remy Rio is probably gifted Bastia a point because I think he's at fault for both goals. But twos and throws. Too awful. I think the first goal he should definitely save. It's poor goalkeeping. The second one is, I don't know what he's doing in the second one. It's like, he kind of saves it behind him, doesn't it? It goes through him and he saves it behind. Yeah, strange. So Nolte should really have done better in that one for me.
All right, so Nathan, moving on to you before we start the preview section. Monaco did really well to beat Marseille 4-3 at the Velodrome, but that's now 10 goals conceded in their last 4 matches. Now, given that a goal against Manchester City will make that task much more difficult, is it time for Jardim to adjust his tactics a little bit? I know this team's been a total juggernaut going forward, but if they really have championship aspirations, I know PSG have had this great attack with Ibrahimovic and what have you over the past few years, but also a good defense has been at the heart of that. Is Monaco's defense, is their approach good enough to reach the level they want to in the league and in the Champions League this season, or should Jardim start looking at being just a little bit more conservative?
Yeah, I'm a bit disappointed that I missed this game. Actually, it looked like a cracker, but I think that in the league, no, I think that they can be adventurous as we want, especially because they've played a lot of the big teams already. I mean, they've already got PSG out of the way, Nice out of the way, Marseille out of the way as well. They can really go hell for leather in a lot of these games, and it's shown in some of those really big results that they can get them because other teams aren't really going to test them enough at the back unless you're a team like Guingamp gave them a couple of scares at the weekend. Teams like maybe Montpellier might give them some trouble, but they've played them twice as well. Bordeaux, maybe, that's another team maybe that might test them. Other than that, I don't think they've got too much to worry about on a national front, at least, in the terms of I think they would outscore anyone they play. In the Champions League, yes, I think they need to change something. They have a strange balancing act they need to work against Manchester City because I think conceding a goal, especially early, possibly kills the tie or at least makes it an adventurous game. They would have to really go hell for leather then. But they need to balance it with the fact that they definitely need to score at least 2 goals. So it's a strange one to think that I can see him maybe adjusting it slightly, maybe trying in the Champions League a 4-5-1 to see it, or a mixture of someone like Bernardo Silva maybe behind the attacker and Dirar on a wing who's more defensive minded. Maybe something like that in the Champions League that allows them a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more security in those midfield areas and a bit more security to someone like Sidibe, who's not superb going back, shall we say, is maybe the best way of putting it, the nicest way. So maybe, an adjustment, at least in the Champions League, to be a bit more conservative when it's required, because they can't go 5-3, 4-3s every week, and they can't concede that amount of goals in that many games, especially against quality opponents that they might face. You think of teams like Bayern Munich and Real Madrid. They're really, really great going forward. And facing those kind of teams with too much reckless abandon could quite quickly, if you don't start scoring the goals in reply, gets those games out of hand early, and you don't want that in the Champions League, because a second leg with something like Arsenal have, like a 5-1 deficit, is essentially you're hoping and praying that they don't turn up and you can put 4 goals past them in the end. So yes, they need to change something. Champions League domestically, they will just outscore anyone that they face, really, at this time, at least. If they were facing someone like PSG down the road who've really improved, I would maybe play that tactic against them, but against anyone else, I back them to score more than they concede.
I think that's an assessment I can certainly agree with as well. Adam, do you have any thoughts on this matter before we move on to the matches this weekend?
I think it's definitely going to be an interesting progression for Monaco going forward. But I do agree with Nathan. I think in the Champions League they need to be a little bit more streetwise, perhaps a little bit less naive in how open they can be. So I'd love to see them beat Manchester City, especially as a Manchester United fan as well as Nathan. You know, double-edged sword. Monaco as a French team winning and City going out would be great. But I think Nathan's absolutely spot on. They're going to outscore anyone in Ligue, but they need to be a little bit more subtle in the Champions League if they can. But they might not have the opportunity to do that. They need to score goals, so it's going to be a very interesting balancing act, as Nathan said.
Yeah, so last week we had Nathan and I both did well with our results, but not our scores. Again, it's 3 points for the correct score, 1 point for the correct result. We had some late goals changing some results for us. We had a late goal by Guingamp, a late goal by PSG. Points out of our hands. So 4 points last week for Nathan, 5 points last week for me. That leaves me on 64. Nathan and Adam are tied on 51. Again, still time left in the season to catch up. So we are going to start with tomorrow's match. That's Bordeaux and Lyon. Bordeaux may find this tough going at him after an energetic affair against Lorient, but should Lyon look to rest players as well, or is the Europa League too far away to be concerned at this point?
It depends what their priority is. I think it's going to be very difficult for them to catch Nice in third in the league at the moment. I know that the gap's still in double figures, and it's a long way back to take that third Champions League place. And the game against Rome is Roma in the week, and it's going to be a huge game for them, and it'd be a fantastic tie overall. But I think that if they're going to think about the league against the Europa League, where's their best opportunity of returning to the Champions League? Because they're going to finish in a Europa League place, you would imagine, in the league relatively comfortably, even if they ease off a little bit. You top 5 or probably top 6 if one of the top 5 win the Coupe de France as well. So that I think that's pretty much guaranteed for them. So I would, if I was Genesio, I'd be prioritising the Europa League and going, this is our best opportunity to get back into the Champions League. Although it's going to be tough, yes, Manchester United, Roma, there's some great teams left in, but I think they're one of the top 3-4 sides left, and if they get to semi-finals and they get a decent draw, I think Lyon have definitely got the firepower to win this competition. So for me, I'd like to see him prioritise Europa League. I don't know if that means rest players here, because still need to maintain that momentum. I think it's really easy to sort of shift the balance too far. But so I think he should really go for the Europa League and think this is our best opportunity of getting back in Champions League, and maybe rest a few players here, but it's obviously still go as strong as he can. But perhaps maybe some midfielders like Fekir, who's been playing a few games recently, might deserve a rest perhaps. But go for the Europa League, Genesio. I'd love to see them win it, and assuming United don't, of course, and get back into the Champions League for next year.
All right, Nathan, Bordeaux have been in really good shape recently, especially going forward. Is keeping a clean sheet key for Lyon's confidence, and is it even possible against the likes of Laborde and Kamano, given the form that they've been in?
Yeah, it would be great for Lyon's confidence, but I don't trust their defence. That's probably the difficult point in this one. But is it possible? I suppose it's always possible, but you mentioned earlier that Bordeaux's great recent form, and we mentioned it on Monday, how well they've been playing under Gourvenec recently, with the likes of Kamano and Varda and Malcolm, and even Unas got in the act, and Laborde as well coming off the bench. They've got a real attacking intent at the moment, and they're really starting to score goals and get performances out of those players that we really want to see develop into starters for Bordeaux. I mean, I didn't expect, like I mentioned on Monday, I didn't expect Francois Kamano really to grow into this role so quickly with so many players in front of him at Bordeaux, although he'd shown glimpses of quality at Bastia. And he's been really, really excellent in the last couple of weeks, creating goals and scoring goals. I think he's got 6 for the season now and 4 assists, which is all sort of packaged within the last 10 games, which is really, really good stuff from the youngster. And adding that to the fact that they've got quality from Varda from the midfield. I think he's really growing into the role. Scored his first goal at the weekend. A real box to box live wire. He tries to get involved. I remember him having an excellent game against Toulouse where he was really he was on fire. He was trying to score at every moment, but Lafont kept him out at every single opportunity. It must have been incredibly frustrating. But to see Unas score those super goals as well against Lille to bring him back into the game, to have him back in the fold after the issues disciplinary wise and such, and Malcolm, who's really I think he's got wonderful ability as well. He's really maybe ebbed and flowed out of the season, but he's a really exciting footballer. And Laborde again, who really deserves a starting place. I think he seems to be in and out of it, but he does seem to score whenever he's involved. I think that, in all honesty, Leon could really do with a clean sheet. Whether they can, I don't think so, because they're just too inconsistent at the back. They make too many individual mistakes, and it will cost them at some point. Even if this is a really close game, I'm really looking forward to this actually on Friday. I think it's going to be a really, really good game. It has the potential to be, at least, anyway.
Certainly goals, at least, I think.
Yeah.
And speaking of goals, what would be your prediction then? Adam, we'll start with you.
I'm going to say 3-1 Lyon.
All right. Nathan?
I'm going 2-2.
I will go with a 2-1 Bordeaux win. And let's move on now to a match from the multiplex. It might seem perhaps not the most eye-catching, but I think there's a lot to be said here, and that's Caen and Angers. Now, Adam, Angers were, to be charitable, awful against CA Bastia midweek, and that is a third-tier side. And yes, they were in Ligue 2 a couple years ago. I mean, they're still a semi-professional side, but Angers really showing a lack of intent in that cup match. They did win 3-0 last weekend with Karl Toko Ekambi leading the line. So, of these two displays, which is closer to the real Angers, now that they're starting to get players back from the African Cup of Nations and back to full fitness, and going on from that, how do they keep that form consistently?
First of all, I think as I've mentioned before in the pod, Angers are one of my favourite sides in Ligue, and they can be really compelling at their best. And I think the cup game in the week is kind of indicative of their season a little bit. They haven't taken the cup seriously at all this year. I know that they beat Caen in February, at the beginning of February, 3-1, and that was a very good win. But they've struggled against Grandvilliers in at the beginning of January when they only won 2-1, and they put out a very weak side against Nantes in the Coupe de Ligue, which is a derby, an Eastern derby, which is their biggest derby from Angers' point of view, not Nantes. And that was a big occasion. At least Nantes took it very seriously, and it was a big crowd, and they put out a very weak side for that game. So I think perhaps Moulin has realised that, at least at the start of the year, his squad wasn't the biggest, and perhaps he realised that maintaining that form that they had last year, that was so fantastic for the first sort of 2/3 of the year, half of the year, and staying in the league was going to be difficult with some decent sides coming up and it being very even in that bottom half of the table. So he definitely prioritised the league, which I think is the right decision. So for me, that team that beat Bastia last week so comfortably and has been in fantastic form in February, where they win over Nancy, who were in good form at the time. That win at Lille was fantastic as well, and a decent draw with Rennes in February. So they've very much on form. So I feel like now they, as you mentioned, getting those players back like Karl Toko Ekambi, like Farmad Dahedi, like Sheikh Ndoye, even Nicolas Pepe from the AFCON, that they're really sort of hitting their stride again. They did show a little bit of form at the beginning of the season, and they struggled to get the results they deserved. I thought they were playing well, and just they were losing silly games, losing silly goals. I remember a home game with Lorient where they really should have won and drew 2-2, conceded some silly goals. So I feel like that first 11 is very strong for them, and if they can keep those guys in their team and keep them fit, then they are real. They can give anybody a game in this league on their day, pretty much. And now they're all getting back, and that team is starting to sort of coalesce again. That they're really finding their form, and that's the real Angers, if you like, with that midfield three of Santamaria, Mangani, and Ndoye have been fantastic this season overall, even though when they weren't winning games. Roman Tamara and Ismael Torres still very, very good at the back, although they perhaps haven't had the heights of last season, but they're still very effective defenders. And they've got a lot of options now that everyone's come back from the AFCON. Injuries are starting to clear up a little bit, and they made those signings of Jonathan Bamba, who's been a bit of a revelation, really. I wasn't expecting this kind of form from him. He's been really good for them on the wing. in Billy Ketko's absence and Carl Toko Kambi's absence when he was at the AFCON, and obviously Kevin Berago's an experienced Ligue 1 player as well. So they've got a lot of options in that attacking third. So if they can keep their best players fit and they keep this team together, and that they're very much a very good Ligue 1 side, even albeit a mid-table one. And I would proffer that the team that beat Bastia so comfortably will hopefully be the team they keep going forward for the rest of the season, and they'll comfortably remain in Ligue 1. And I, from my point of view, I hope so. I really enjoy them as a club, and they've got some fantastic players. So hopefully that Bastia team will maintain its form. I think the cup game was a bit of they didn't take it too seriously in the week.
Yeah, certainly Bastia Angers are in great defensive form. Only one goal conceded their last 5, and as you rightly said, they are in good form. That's now 4 wins on the trot in all competitions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, again, it is a matter of rotation for Moulin, and who knows? Maybe Angers could make a run at the cup. We've seen unlikely teams do well. Bastia in the Coupe de League final a few years ago. Guingamp winning the Coupe de France. It wouldn't be beyond the realm possibility for this team to really push on and make an impact. Moving on now, we've got our predictions for that. Nathan, what do you think between Caen and Angers in the multiplex?
I'm probably going against what my head probably should say, but I'm going with the current form of Caen, which is 1-0 Caen.
All right, actually, I was going to say the same thing. I'll go with 1-0. Adam?
I was going to say 1-0, so I'll go 0-0.
0-0. All right. Neither of the teams are great attacking, but Caen have looked decent. I think they've adapted their tactics slightly in the absence of Jan Caramo and Jean-Victor Makengo. Now they're back to a 3-5-2 with Ronnie Rodland playing a little bit closer to Ivan Santini. Rodland's been amongst the goals lately, and I think that's helped make a difference. You pick up some of the scoring load from Santini, who's been a little bit out of form. But I think this should be an underrated match to watch in the multiplex on Saturday. Not really a whole lot else that I think necessarily catches the eye of those 5 matches. But there is another match we're going to talk about, so hopefully we can have something to be engaged with here. That's Montpellier hosting Guingamp. Nathan, Montpellier were unfortunate against Nice last weekend, and some have pointed to Gassay's dropping Lucas Picorni for Daniel Congre at central defense as being part of that issue. That loss was 2-1. The veteran was torched by Mikel Lebihan on the winner and generally looked off the pace in his first start back from quite a long injury layoff. Did Gassay have an obligation to him as a veteran presence in the team, or should he have stuck with the players that had seen Montpellier win 3 of 4 after his appointment?
It's always a difficult toss-up, that kind of decision. Do you stick with the team that's got you good results recently, or do you bring in someone who, at least on the face of it, is a better player, at least from what we've previously seen of Daniel Congre? And at the same time, this is a really difficult game, I think, to really bring someone back in, especially at centre-back. With Nice being, yes, I suppose without the likes of Balotelli and player who's out for the season, obviously, they probably thought it was a much more comfortable game to bring him in. And in all honesty, Montpellier in the first half were the better side as well. They really pushed, they really created a lot of chances, and probably should have, on another day, might have made it out of sight before it even got to the point where Lebihan came on in the second half. But if I was Gassay, I think you try not to mix with something that's working, even if it means bringing in someone like that. It's much easier if it was, say, if this was, and I mention it almost every week, it seems, if this was Riyad Boudibu who's coming back from a long injury layoff, there's no doubt in my mind that you put that kind of player in because he's a difference maker. Again, at the same time, if this is someone like Monaco and it's Gleek who's been out for a while, you bring him in because he's an exceptional talent. Is Congre of that kind of level? Is he that much better than Picorni's shown in the last couple of weeks in a team that's been succeeding? I'm not as certain. When you're a mid-table side like that, I wouldn't have risked it, in all honesty. I would have tried to keep him going what was working. If it didn't work, then at least you've got the excuse to bring in Congre next week and giving him an extra week's training, giving him a little bit longer to recover and bits like that, and sort of get back into the flow of playing again. And that's probably the issue again, is he got torched in the winner near the last 5-10 minutes. Maybe it was, again, match fitness, not being back into the swing of things, that tiring in that last 10 minutes or so, seeing him beaten. And yeah, it was a risk, in more honesty. But again, it's a real toss-up for a manager, isn't it? It's, do you play that experienced player that you know what you're getting, or do you stick what you're with? If you get it wrong, you're going to get torched either way, in all fairness. So while I might have done it differently, I don't blame Gasset for that one.
All right, get score predictions here. I'll go with a 2-0 Montpellier win. Adam?
I'll go 1-0 Montpellier.
And Nathan?
3-1 Montpellier.
Have been showing good form that lost to Nice. Notwithstanding, Steve Mounier is back amongst the goals. Certainly a match to keep an eye on as well. Guingamp have been stuttering a little bit of late. Now, our final match to preview is Sunday's encounter between Toulouse and Lille. Adam, Toulouse have got themselves could have got themselves back into the discussion for European football with a win last week against a rather middling Nancy side, but they failed to take advantage. What went wrong in that match? Was it dropping Trejo into central midfield? Was it the absence of Blanc? Was it something else?
I think it's a combination of factors. I think the Alexis Blanc is a very, very underrated player, and Dupraz has come out and said there was that period that we discussed before on the pod where their form really dropped off, and he was out of the side, and he was sort of in and out of the side, but he was carrying a heel injury, I think, carrying some sort of injury anyway, and Dupraz said that he's so important for this team. If he's not playing well, his ability on the ball, his range of passing, and his ability to cover the back four as well. He does so much for that midfield. Without him, they're a lesser team, and that's something I think it was painfully evident last week. I don't necessarily think that Trejo dropping back into midfield is too much of a negative. I think he's actually relatively decent in that position. I thought he had a middling game. It wasn't terrible, but I felt like overall the midfield suffered. Not just without Blanc, obviously, but with Martin Braithwaite playing effectively as an A-mid. I know that Domaz came in and as sort of on that left-hand side where Braithwaite's sort of been very good, not necessarily this season because he's been playing as the main striker, but when Wassim Ben Yedder was there last season, he was very good on the left-hand side, and that's a position that he does very well, even though it's perhaps not his main role. He's definitely a main striker. But moving him inside, I think, in that situation where Nancy didn't commit too many men forward, they were aware that they were in poor form, and they really didn't cause too many problems. And I think they were happy with the draw, to be honest. And a very competitive midfield. I felt like that Toulouse could have taken hold of that midfield, and didn't, especially without Blen, obviously, as I said. But Braithwaite was a little bit too further forward, and with Seitu and Pedretti and Benassa, those very central midfield players. None of them are really going to push on, and they're all quite defensively minded, at least fair, overall. That Nancy weren't caused any problems in sort of 30, 40 yards from goal. They were very comfortable defending and got about Toulouse, and Toulouse didn't take control of that middle third of the pitch, which they really could have, really the opportunity to, because Braithwaite perhaps doesn't have the discipline to play that A-mid role that perhaps even Toivonen does and that Trejo does, and he doesn't necessarily help out in midfield, and perhaps hasn't got the link-up play with those two midfielders of Bodiger and Trejo in there. So perhaps Toulouse missed an opportunity there, trying to get Domaz back in the side, who didn't have the greatest of games. So perhaps it would have been simpler when they sort of used to having the Somalia and Silla perhaps on the wings, and the midfield is also quite sort of well stocked, and they were a little bit lightweight there last week with Bodiger and Trejo. So I think for Dupraz, maybe a little bit of a lesson learned, that he was trying to get Braithwaite back into a central position with Delors because he wants them both to play up front. But I don't know that it's something that it suits Braithwaite. I think it suits Toivonen, I think it suits Trejo, but it doesn't necessarily suit him. So he may have to rethink that and have to keep Braithwaite on the left, because I have a feeling that Braithwaite, if it was him, he wants to be the main man. He wants to play centrally at least. So he may have to, for the rest of the season at least, bite the bullet and play on the left hand side, because he's very good there as well. So I think it's perhaps lesson learned, perhaps, and they need to be a little bit more cautious in that midfield area and really, try and take hold of it, because they're very good at home, and I expect them to continue to push for that European place if Delors really giving them a shot on the arm. So they're still very good at home, and away from home, it sort of conspired against them a little bit last week, and it didn't really coalesce, unfortunately. But perhaps they won't. I'd be surprised anyway if they revert to that 40-film with Braithwaite in attacking midfield anytime soon, because it didn't really work, and there wasn't much flow to their play, and they were a bit stunted going forward overall. They didn't really have those opportunities to feed Delors or Jean or De Mazzo on the overlap either. So perhaps a little bit of miscalculation on Dupraz's part, but I still think they're very much top 8 team, perhaps even higher if they keep this good home form going.
Yeah, charitable assessment there, Adam. Toulouse completed 67% of their passes against us.
Yeah.
A scoreless draw. I think that, I'm not too fond of statistics on a podcast, but I think that does speak volumes as to the quality that was on display.
Yeah, it was a terrible, terrible game of football. It really was.
So what would be your score prediction then for this?
I'm going to say Toulouse 2-0.
Okay.
Toulouse bounced back from that bloody atrocious display at the weekend, 3-0 against middling Lyon.
Okay, I'll go with 2-1. All right, and that is all for this week. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday or Friday, whatever time you're listening to. For Nathan Staples and Adam White, I've been Eric Devin. Please do follow us on Twitter at GFFN and visit us online at www.getfootballnewsfrance for all the latest news, views from around the world of French football. We'll be back next week. Until then, please do tune in on Monday for the main show with Nathan and Philip Bargio. Thank you very much and have a pleasant rest of your day.